percent overall from the field, but he was also 50% from threes. He's 5 of 10.
I know you're out there. It's okay. Stand back there.
No, more than likely you're gonna get that number 1 seed, and so I want Houston to be ranked at number 1 and 8.
Hey, it's Andy Yanez. We are off the heels of yet another Houston Cougars men's basketball game. This time, number 2 ranked Houston ranked both in the Associated Press and USA Today's coaches poll. And I guess if you look at the NCAA tournament committee, number 2 overall in general in the country, the Houston Cougars defeated a shorthanded Memphis Tigers team on Sunday afternoon inside the Fertitta Center. Houston came out with 72-64 victory. They were led by 2 players, beginning with junior forward Juwan Roberts, who had a career-high 20 points. He also had 12 rebounds to secure the double-double on Marcus Sasser. He had 20 points, and junior guard Jamal Shedd also got into double-figure scoring-wise with 10 points of his own. Joining me, as always, today on Dunlap, Kris Gardner. It's funny, your screen just popped up in the middle of the intro, but how are you two doing? Before we jump into and dissect Houston's latest victory, they're now 25-2 overall, 13-1 against American Athletic Conference opponents.
I'm doing great, man. How you guys doing?
All is well, man. All is well.
So let's get right into it. And I think we look top to bottom. Obviously, we look at where Houston is at now. Like I mentioned, 13-1 against the American Athletic Conference. Big game for Juwan Roberts. But I think when you look, at least looking at the stat sheet, the biggest thing that stands out, it's got to be the free throws. Free throw shooting. And in particular, how Houston was able to ice the game. This game ended up drawing out and going long because there were so many fouls called, in particular in the second half. And give the Cougars credit for something that's kind of been maybe a potential Achilles heel for this team. It didn't look like it tonight. They went 23 of 26 from the free throw line. Something that Marcus Sasser pointed out post-game was, Juwan Roberts went 8 of 9 from the free throw line. Marcus Sasser went 8 of 8. Javier Francis went 2 for 3. Reggie Chaney went 2 for 2. So top to bottom, Kris, we talked about on the last episode, it depends who shoots the free throws. It didn't matter who shot free throws today. It looked like they were all going in for the Cougars.
And salute to Reggie Chaney, because let's Rage Coogs. That's if he goes to the line, you expect him to miss both of them. Well, he made both of them today. And Andy and I kind of joked in the first half. I think when Javier made his free throws, we're like, this game is over. But they made free throws, so I forgot who the viewer was, the fan was, who chimed in on last show. Do they work on free throws? What do they work on in practice? Fundamentals, whatever. Well, 23 or 26 today, so they do work on it. It just happens. You miss them, you make them. Depends on who's shooting them. But Juwan Roberts set a tone. He made it to the free throw line today. He kind of had some bobbled hands a few times and missed some passes, but he had a good game. Overall, it's a win, and I'm not going to dissect it over an 8-point win with Kenny today, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. It's a win, period.
Yeah, rebound. I mean, free throws like you guys were talking about. To me, it was just the pressure of the defense and their inability to handle the pressure and also to take care of the basketball. I mean, Houston just forced turnover after turnover after turnover, especially in that first half. And I think their defense really was the difference today.
And I'm gonna be factual, but petty and messy. For anybody who chimes in, from Memphis fans or whatever, well, y'all would have won this game if Kendrick would have played. But y'all didn't say these same things last year when Marcus Sasser and Jamal Martin didn't play. Y'all didn't say these same things when Memphis beat Houston twice. So which is it? Does it make a difference or it doesn't make a difference? The Cougs won today. Memphis played well. We knew they played well. It's a rivalry game. We knew they'd be hyped up. They'd be focused, fired up, all those things. Houston won the game. Andy, I think Kelvin Sampson says it often, but he again said today, post-game, this isn't a beauty contest. They don't ask you how it looked if you won the game. Did you win? Yes. Okay. On to the next.
Right, and I think the biggest thing with this this game, like you said, it's not a beauty contest. Something that Calvin Sampson said after the game in his post-game availability. When you look at it, it's probably not the best game for either of these two teams. But at the end of the day, a win is a win. Now, Houston, like I said, this is their 25th win of the season, and I think, Dayon, like you pointed out, the defense is something with Kris. It seemed like for a majority of the game, maybe had some lapses here and there, but Houston was just swarming defensively, and give credit. There was multiple players that were giving impacts, and we're going to talk about it later in the show, but name it, top to bottom: Terrence Arsenal, Javier Francis, Reggie Chain, Jawan Roberts, Marcus Sasser, Tremont Mark, Jamal Shed. They all seem to have plays defensively against Memphis, and good credit to Houston Dolphins too. It seemed like they were playing at a faster pace for stretches during this game, and I think that might be a big reason why they got DeAndre Williams into foul trouble, and ultimately why he fouled out. They were constantly attacking Memphis and their defense, and they capitalized on it.
Yeah, this is the second game in a row where Houston has had a stretch where they made 5 or more consecutive shots. And that's huge for them. And like you said, the key to that is getting out in transition and pushing the pace to just allow their God-given ability and their basketball IQ to take over, whether it's Jamal penetrating, getting all the way inside to the defense, or penetrating, kicking, or whomever it is making a right play, but not going against a set defense, because Memphis has a really good defense and athleticism and length to disrupt Houston in the half court. But Houston, when they have those stretches like that, when they're making consecutive shots like they had in back-to-back games, I think that's what Jamal was talking about, and when they haven't had a stretch where everyone is kind of playing really good collectively together. And I think they're doing that, and they're getting better on the offensive end in that manner.
And they did not shoot well from the three-point line today. 3 for 17. Most of them were good shots. Manuel had shots rim out. 0 for 4 from 3, 1 for 7 from the floor were all for him. Jarrett didn't shoot well from the perimeter, but they still found a way to win. I mean, today, they did not shoot well from 3, but they did a great job from the free throw line. Good teams find ways to win when you're not playing your A game. That's what it's all about.
If I could add on to your point, Kris, just in terms of, again, Kelvin said if they were just looking purely at kind of how Houston was running its offense and the shots they were getting, he would have said it looked like a pretty good offense. They just weren't falling in during stretches at times. So absolutely, Kris, to add on to your point about just good teams find a way to win. And a good quote that Calvin Sampson gave after this game about his team, about the makeup of the team, and this is a direct quote from Kelvin. He said, "The makeup of this team is winners. These kids know how to win." And I mean, it's time tested. I mean, we're 27 games in. They've lost 2 games. They know how to close it out, and they know how to win in more ways than one. Like you said, today was the free throw line, and a different game it could be from 3-point line. It's a different style. There's not necessarily a specific script that the Houston Cougars need to, a formula that the Houston Cougars need to have for them to be able to win games. You always hear it with some teams like, oh, they have to be able to hold opponents to this certain amount. It seems like Houston can kind of handle through adversity. Another word that kind of was thrown around during today's post-game availability, and find a way to win. And I'm looking at, again, in this game, Houston only had 10 assists as a team. They made 23 field goals. Maybe not necessarily as high in some other games where Houston has many more assists compared to their field goals. But they still, like I said, kind of, not to sound like a broken record, but they figured out a way to come out with a victory.
I think both teams were less into ball movement for assists and more into one-on-one, see if they could beat their man off the dribble kind of things. And that resulted in more fouls, more trips to the free throw line for both teams. So it's a different way to win. I mean, heck, the Cougs down the stretch, Coach Sampson acknowledged it. He went to zone for a couple of possessions because they were having problems, how the refs are calling the game tighter in the second half. And Memphis just went dribble. They just went dribble drive. And they got Jamal in foul trouble. Jamal got into foul trouble. So that was Memphis' way to score, was that way. But hey, Memphis played well. They did not play a great game without their best player. But we did not expect them to roll over and just say, oh, well, Kendra's not here. Forget it. We're not even going to try today. Give Penny and his players credit. The Cougs won. The Cougs led the game for 37 minutes. 37 minutes. And they won by 8. They didn't cover a line. When my buddy told me the spread was like 14.5, which I thought was too high. 8-point win. Next.
Real quickly, to add on to Chris, that on ESPN, whenever it shows the Sports Center graphics and it shows the score at the bottom, I think it was like a 14.5 points line around that mark. And when I saw that, I was like, oh man, I wish I was in Vegas. I would have go bet the under, because these games always seem to come down to the wire, regardless of
Yeah.
who's playing. So I don't know, it's just one of those true rivalry games in the American Athletic Conference.
But Andy, this conference is not very good. So who? I mean, this conference is full of bad teams.
don't even
So I
start.
mean, why even bother playing these games?
Well, Houston's going to play another team in the American Athletic Conference on Wednesday called Tulane. That's similar to Memphis. They also have 10 wins. They're actually a team that swept the Memphis Tigers, like we mentioned in our last Let's Rage Coogs postgame show. But Chris, on the topic of what would happen if Kendrick Davis play, hey, that's exactly what Rusty Reed said. Another sloppy home game against an inferior opponent. Cougs lose that game if a healthy Kendrick had played. Jawan saved that game. Jawan Roberts, and we'll get more about Jawan Roberts as well. But Chris, I'll let you take that comment and just your initial thoughts on it.
But I want Dan to chime in as well. Kendrick did not play. We saw him pregame shooting around, and many of us thought he was going to play, at least try to play. So when the beat writers put out from Memphis that he was not in the starting lineup and was not going to play, we were surprised. It's Kendrick's last game in front of his home friends and family. So Petty opted to not play him. So, hey, he did not play. His teammates stepped up in his absence. If he plays in 2 weeks, Emmanuel Sharp might go 5 for 5 from 3. Then what? Cougs win by 10. Then what? I mean, whatever. If this, that, and the other, whatever. Today, Memphis scored 64 points. The Cougs scored 72.
Yeah, watching that game, you can't help but think, though, the impact that he would have had against Memphis, because what Memphis struggled with was just taking care of the basketball, and what Kendrick is able to do is able to settle down their team and get them in their sets. And so Houston did a great job of pressuring them, knowing that they didn't have their point guard, someone who could not only just settle down the pace, but can score at an elite level as well. And Alex Lomax, you could tell he wasn't rhythm, he was rusty, and so he has that ability to kind of control the game from a point guard perspective, but he just didn't look in rhythm. You could tell he hadn't played in X amount of games. And so from just being objective about the game, Houston definitely benefited from Kendrick Davis not being there. I wouldn't go out and say they wouldn't have won the game, because they would have guarded Memphis differently, and maybe some of the other players don't have different games. So it would have been a totally different game. But I can definitely watch that game and say that Memphis missed him, because things that they struggle with, he would have aided them in there, specifically just taking care of the basketball, not turning it over, handling the pressure better, because he's really a one-man press break. You can give him the ball, tell everybody else get out of the way, and he can take care of the ball like that. And not only that, he can just give you unscripted buckets. And so they definitely missed him, and for sure.
Sure, no question. Kendrick's one of the best players in the conference. Sure, they missed him. But he's played some game this year when he's had 5, 6 turnovers. And Memphis has had 18, 19, 20 turnovers in those games as well. But today, we can't say that Memphis would have won the game if KD would have played. He didn't play. We don't know about all these ifs. Today, Houston did what they had to do to win. Period. And come tournament time, what are we going to hear from an opponent like the Cougs play? Now we're getting into Houston, they hadn't played anybody with a top-seeded team, or if so-and-so wouldn't have played this game, they advanced to the Elite Eight. Well, they haven't played a top team because of all the upsets, blah, blah, blah. Folks, tournament time. You play who your opponent is that day. You win, you move on. You don't, your season's over.
Well, we're going to be moving on from this segment as more fans trickle in. Watching live on the Houston Rombar Review YouTube channel, we'd like to remind you guys that this is Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. The Saxenian Family is the primary sponsor of Let's Rage Coogs for the remainder of the regular season and heading into the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament, which 3 weeks from now will be American Athletic Conference Championship game day for the men's basketball tournament. Also be Selection Sunday. We might get into that aspect as well later on in the show. But until then, of course, I'd like to thank our other partners for this episode of Let's Rage Coogs, starting with Star Pizza. Star Pizza is Houston's best pizza since 1976 with multiple locations across the Houston area. Be sure to make Star Pizza a stop on your way home. Be sure to visit them online at starpizza.net, where not only can you check out their menu, but you can also order online, so you can just stop and go at any of these Star Pizza locations. Of course, our other partner for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs, HOUNIL. Here's a message from Javier Francis and HOUNIL.
Hi, my name is Javier Francis, and I'm partnering with HOUNIL. Hey, we need the fans to go to HOUNIL.com to subscribe to our player-created content. Supporting Cougar basketball helps us players stay among the top teams in the country. Once again, that's HOUNIL.com to subscribe. Thank you, and go Cougs.
So once again, special thanks to HOUNIL and Javier Francis for that message and being a sponsor on today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs. So on the other side of this break, let's hear what Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson had to say, as well as Juwan Roberts, who we'll get into on the other side of this clip. But Juwan Roberts had a monster game, like I said, a new career high when it comes to points, 20 points. He also had 12 rebounds, which has become the norm for him, being the leading rebounder for Houston. Here's what they had to say following Houston's 72-64 victory over the Memphis Tigers.
Sort of help set, the mood while, you guys were able to start getting things going offensively.
Yeah, I think our offense and our defense was kind of contrasting patterns. If you look at our shots that we were getting, you say you guys are running great offense, but that proves a simple point. Scoreboard only turns if the ball goes in, and we had a lot of good looks. Marcus Emmanuel that could have, I don't know if break it open is the right word, but extend it. We missed an open three, they'd go down there and drive it, get to the free throw line. But that's what Alabama did to us. We guarded them for about 30 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes, they just spread the floor and drove it on us. So I went zone a couple of possessions, and that stemmed the tide, but we got to get better at being organized in the right spots when teams are only going to drive it. But the McCadden kid was good at that. Memphis is a good team. Penny's done a nice job there over the years. And, two good teams, two tough teams. I don't know that was our best game, but I don't know that was theirs either. Just two tough teams.
Rick James here in the middle.
Yeah, Marcus and Juwan, just Memphis cuts it to 4 pretty quick in that second half. Just take us through what went down there and how y'all were able to sort of hold them off, prevent it from getting them closer.
I just feel like they just went on a good run. Basketball is a game of run, so I just feel like we just had to keep our composure. I feel like that was adversity, during the game, and I feel like we just did a good job staying composed and handling their run, and then coming back and then getting our run. So,
same thing like you said, just staying together. Don't go away from the group. Continue to do what we're doing. Stick to our culture, and it's a game of runs. They going runs, we going runs, and just kept our composure, like you said, and extended the lead.
Got Chris Paul.
Calvin, did you see something in the matchup that you thought you could get Juwan good shots, and what did his aggressiveness, mean for you guys?
Yeah, two things. One is sometimes to get J1 going, I call his number a lot. J1's a really, really good basketball player. He's a very good player. But it's such a long season. We play so many games that there's going to be ups and downs with all these kids because they play great. That's usually a sign that they're probably not going to play great the next one. And if they play poorly, they're not going to play poorly the next one. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. But effort can't be ups and downs with effort. How hard you play, how hard you compete. And that's something that we've tried to hang our hat on. I don't want our kids thinking, playing good equates to how many points I score, how many shots I get, or am I hot tonight? It's hard to play great every night doing that. But good teams, they defend, they rebound, and they play unselfish. Memphis puts an inordinate amount of pressure. For most of the nights, we had single-digit turnovers. I think we wound up with 11. But the makeup of this team is winners. These kids know how to win. Marcus is, since his freshman year, Jamal, he backed up Dejan on the Final Four team, and he's a starting point guard on Elite 8 team, and now look at it. That's what these kids do. They win. They look great every night. I never thought it was a beauty contest. Last time I checked, you don't put an asterisk beside anything. Just go win the game.
So once again, that was Houston Cougars head coach Kelvin Sampson along with Marcus Sasser and Juwan Roberts that you heard in that clip. Now, Chris, I'll toss it over to anyone who wants to dissect it first. But to me, that stood out specifically about Juwan Roberts, who I kind of want to focus on in this segment, is how Kelvin said, one, he shouted out how overall as a basketball talent, how skilled Juwan Roberts is, but from an offensive perspective, to get him going, he called specific plays to get him touches and be able to get into rhythm in the game. That's what stood out to me from that clip in particular about Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, it also stood out to me as well what he said about J1 is just his ability to play within himself, as well as knowing that every game that you're not going to have. Well, him saying that he don't want his kids to equate being hot or scoring a lot to having good games, because it's not often. And factual, it was his first 20-point game of his career, but he still often has good games without scoring that large amount of points. And so he's one of those players on any given night that's going to impact winning and have a good game. And so, I like the unselfish, like he talked about. They were unselfish. They didn't have a high number of assists, but they still played unselfish basketball, moving the basketball, and just playing for one another. I think that's one thing that goes unspoken on how unselfish each individual is on this team. And on any given night, like he said, just because you have a good game tonight, more than likely you're going to have a bad game the next one. Or if you don't have a good game today, you're going to have a good one the next one. And I think that bodes to the unselfishness, because they're just aware on any given night how many different players can have good shooting games. And so I think Houston can just beat you in a number of different ways. And I love the different defenses that they've shown throughout this entire season. I think this is one of the few seasons that I can remember that they've shown different defensive looks, and they all played all of them well.
And Coach touched on it, Dayon, in postgame. He mentioned that this team he wants his players to be selfless. And they are. Juan had the most shot attempts today. He took 10. Marcus had 9. So it was balanced shot attempts throughout the lineup. Some guys who Houston probably relies on for scoring, the shots didn't fall today, like Emmanuel Sharp, Jarris. But they still found a way to win. Was it perfect? No. Was it their A game? No. But the other team has something to do with that as well. So keep that in mind going forward. The Cougs may shoot lights out from 3 on Wednesday and beat Tulane by a lot. Well, they didn't do that today. They were 3 for 17 from 3. But how many of us would have predicted the Cougs would have gone 23 of 26 from the foul line today? They did that today, and they won.
It's kind of the inverse of that Temple game. The Houston Cougars obviously on the positive side of it in this outing. But again, staying with Roberts, Dayon, like you mentioned about, this career high, 20 points, the first time he's done it in his collegiate career. But something that, and even going back to, like I alluded to earlier in the show about Terrence Arsenal, where Marcus Sasser and Kelvin Sampson, they shouted out him in particular for the defense that he brought. And then Marcus said that he impacted winning today. And then he said he was proud of him, which, to me, again, you heard in that clip from Kelvin Sampson where they don't wants their students, their players to equate having a good game with having a certain amount of points. And it's time and time again that Kelvin says after games or even after practices, he couldn't care less about how many points his players score. It's all about what else they do when they don't have the ball in their hands. And for Juwan Roberts, yeah, what's going to be the eye grabber is those 20 points. But again, he's consistently become a double-digit rebounder. He's starting to get to a point where if he doesn't get at least 8 or 9 rebounds, and there's something wrong with what Roberts went out there and did. But, I mean, that hasn't really been a problem over the last couple of days, last couple of games.
Yeah, we live in an analytic era right now where a lot of people focus on points and shot attempts. And you go to YouTube, people are looking at highlights. People don't even watch games anymore. They just watch highlights and look at the stat sheets. And so I think also that plays into the outside noise. I mean, this is a different time for Coach Sampson. He's been coaching a long time, and this is a different generation than what he coached in previous years, where it's in the age of social media where they're looking and they have people who have direct ability to contact them and say, whether it's Twitter, whether it's whatever the case may be, and say whatever it is, and it could be used as a distraction or it could be used as whatever. And so it's just a different age and a different time. And I think Coach Sampson is aware of that, and he's still maneuvering on how to reach these young men and how to keep them grounded and focus on the task at hand, to be selfless and to be an unselfish team to get to the goals and where they want to go.
Well put, Dayon. And that's what this is all about. Winning the game. Okay? Fans would be freaking out if the Houston would have lost today. I can't believe they lost to Memphis without Kendrick Davis. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with this team? This team is a fraud. Number one, hot. They're not number one. Oh no, they're not. But now we got fans saying, well, if Kendrick would have played, I can imagine what would have happened if he'd have played today. He didn't. And Houston won the game by 8. They did what they were supposed to do to win today. Tomorrow, Wednesday matchup, completely different. 2 weeks from now, could be a different matchup, different circumstances. Guys, think about this. And I know Coach Sampson would hate me doing this. But Andy, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. If Houston wins Wednesday and Saturday, they clinch the regular season title.
If they win, I'm not sure about
Wednesday?
Saturday. So Tulane's 10-3, and I'm not sure if Tulane plays a game.
They'd be up 3 games over Tulane, and they got the head-to-head. If they beat Tulane, then they win Wednesday, they'd be what? 15. What are they now? 15-1. So they'd have 2 games.
They're 13-1 in conference now. They'd be 14-1 if they beat Tulane. If Tulane loses,
Saturday,
that'd be 10-4.
They'd be 15-1. So 3 games up, 2 games to go.
If they win Saturday, they for sure clinch. I think they might even be able to clinch Saturday, because then that would be a 4-game cushion. I think some of it would depend on Memphis too. But yeah, if they take care of business for this upcoming week against Green Wave and against East Carolina, will have clinched the conference title, the regular season conference title once again. I think they did it. They did it last season when they clinched a conference title before March even starts.
So yeah. So if they're up, I'm not, shame on me for doing this, but just thinking ahead. They win Wednesday, win Saturday, they'd be 15-1 in conference play. I think everybody else would have at least 4 losses. Only 2 games left for Houston. They couldn't be caught, because the most they could be with 15-3. Everybody else, the best they could be 14-4. So let's keep that in perspective. All the hype, all these things talking about they have a chance to wrap up the regular season title with 2 games to go. Be happy about that. Okay? Be happy about that. Be proud of that. There were times 5, 6, 7 years ago, Kevin Sampson's first year here, man, I'm not sure how long it's going to take Coach Sam to get this program turned around. My goodness. 7,730 today, Andy, right? New record for Cheetah Center record?
A new for Cheetah Center record, 7,730. The most people that have ever filed into the Fertitta Center, which actually beats the record that was set this season, which came on earlier this year in December when Houston played Alabama. That record was 7,718. So they found a way to pack 12 more people into today's matchup against Memphis. And you could tell from the beginning of the game that the atmosphere was electric. And I believe it was Javier Francis's block where I can't remember what Memphis player it was, but he just erased a layup attempt that they tried, and he ended up coming down the other end, and Jamal Shedd gave him a perfect pass. He wasn't able to finish the first one, but he got fouled and ended up having an N1 on that same play when he got the rebound. But just plays like that absolutely is another electric crowd, which for something from not just men's basketball specifically, but just Houston Cougars overall when it comes to the fan base, it's been a big question mark. And for the most part this season, fans have done a good job at showing up and supporting this in particular team, which I mean that haven't really been given a reason not to, considering they've been top 5 the entire year.
And I want to say this: Dan Gavitt, VP of Basketball Committee, was at the game today. He's in town. I think they're doing some planning meetings, prepping for the selection committee, all those things, as well as obviously the Final Four will be in Houston. I spoke to him a little bit at halftime. He was bragging about the atmosphere inside the building. Damn, Andy, y'all remember a few years ago, there was no atmosphere. Okay, it was nothing. It was just dim, blah, But now people see what's going on inside the building. Let's enjoy what we're seeing here, folks. This team has he said it again post-game, Andy. This team has a chance to win the national championship. Not saying they're going to, but they have a chance to do that. Coach Sam said they're one of 20 teams that have a chance to do that. Think about that this year and where this program was 9 years ago. Enjoy this, folks. Stop being nitpicking this and that. Folks, enjoy the ride.
Because you never know how long it will last. But we'll put a pin on it because for those of you that have trickled in, I'd like to remind everybody that this is Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian Family. Whether you're watching us live, streaming live on the Houston Round Ball Review YouTube channel, or checking us out audio only wherever you get Pod Slamma Jamma, whether that may be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we thank you for making us a part of your day whenever you may be listening to this. Of course, we'd also like to say thank you to our other partners for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs, starting with Star Pizza with multiple locations across the Houston area. Star Pizza is Houston's best pizza since 1976. Be sure to visit them online at starpizza.net, where not only you can check out where those 3 locations are, but also their online menu and even order ahead. So you can just stop and go at any location that you choose. And of course, also HOUNIL. Once again, we'll send it over to Javier Francis for one message about HOUNIL.
Hi, my name is Javier Francis, and I'm partnering with HOUNIL. Hey, we need the fans to go to HOUNIL.com to subscribe to our player credit content. Supporting Cougar basketball helps us players stay among the top teams in the country. Once again, that's HOUNIL.com to subscribe. Thank you, and go Cougs.
Once again, thanks Javier Francis for the message about HOUNIL. And real quickly before we segue into our next segment, it's time for our own sponsorship plug and ad, and that's with the Let's Rage Coogs shop. We officially have official Let's Rage Coogs merchandise coming in 2 different lines. So the Let's Rage line or the There Will Be Rage line both come in a t-shirt and or hoodie form, whichever you like to prefer, because we all know that everyone enjoys hoodie weather regardless of what type of season it may be here in the city of Houston. But it comes in various different colors that you can choose from. And once again, there are 2 different lines, whether it be Let's Rage or There Will Be Rage. And there wasn't much rage on today's show, but sure down the line, the unofficial Houston postgame show of football and men's basketball. And just getting started, we kind of spoke it into existence. Here it is. So if you are interested in buying some Let's Rage Coogs merch, be sure to check it out at bonfire.com/store/Let's Rage Coogs shop. And of course, we'd like to thank all of you guys that wanted merch and supported and have already supported us and who may have already bought your Let's Rage Coogs merch. for those of you that might be heading to the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament, or heck, even heading into the spring, just rock your Let's Rage Coogs merch. We love to see it. Tag us on social media. We love to see it. Kris, Dan, you guys have any additional message you'd like to add before we move on to our next segment?
I do. I want to mention this to Dayon. Dayon, I was walking into the building, had a fan yell out to me, "Let's rage." So we appreciate everybody. We're becoming recognized, folks. So that is cool, man. For people to know who we are and recognize who are fans of the show. So that feels really good.
I love it, man. I love it. Love to hear it.
No, absolutely. This wouldn't be possible without people like you, whether you may be watching or listening. Without you guys, if there was no interest in it, we wouldn't be doing the Let's Rage Coogs. So it's awesome. Kris, like you said, it hasn't just been today. It's been really almost every game where at least there's multiple people usually that say Let's Rage, or there will be rage along those lines, which is pretty awesome because it's something that we created. Really, it started around this time last year during the American Athletic Conference tournament run. So I guess we're kind of nearing the anniversary of Let's Rage Coogs. We'll celebrate that once we get into the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament. I hadn't even thought of that. But segueing into our next segment here on Let's Rage Coogs, we actually have an exclusive clip of head coach Penny Hardaway, who thank him because he gave me a time of day to ask 2 questions after he had done the radio show. So here's what Penny Hardaway had to say after the game, following Houston's 72-64 victory over Memphis. So obviously towards the end of the game, you guys were able to make a run to cut it to 5. You had a couple of opportunities to get it to within 3. How do you feel the game ultimately shook up for you guys?
Well, obviously we were just wanting the chance to win the game at the end, especially as bad as the first half that we played. And be able to fight back and have an opportunity, that's all you want. We just didn't capitalize.
What are your thoughts overall in Houston? It really seemed at moments their defense was really forming. What kind of struggles did they give you guys?
I'm used to them. They're a great team. Their culture is unbelievable. They play hard every possession, and everything that they're getting, they deserve. I mean, you're going to beat them, you have to beat them. They don't beat themselves.
Thank you. So once again, Penny Hardaway, who gave me 2 questions, and I am thankful for the time because he didn't have to do anything. But, of course, shouting out the Houston culture. That's something that you hear a lot from opposing head coaches when they talk about the Houston Cougars, and something that leading into this game, something Marcus Sasser and Jawan Roberts both said on Friday after their practice. They called this game a culture game. It was going to be a battle of Houston's culture versus Memphis's culture. And again, it's not kind of surprising, regardless of who was on the floor for the Tigers, even though Kendrick Davis was out, this game ended up being kind of up in the air with 2 minutes left. I think the Memphis had a chance to cut it to 3 with under 2 minutes left, and they just couldn't convert.
I know he credited Houston culture, but what you just mentioned, you have to credit Memphis's culture, because that boils into how they came out and they competed. I mean, no excuses. They put their best foot forward and they played hard. And I think I'm sure he's learned some of that from Coach Sampson, and playing Houston is going to take the ability to compete for a full 40 minutes and playing hard, regardless of what the situation is. If you're down your best player, your best 2 or 3 players like Houston last year. And so, I mean, you got to give credit to Memphis. And I think during the broadcast, they mentioned how Coach Penny wanted to kind of get away from having so much young talent, wanting to have some veterans with it and experience, and still sprinkling a little young talent with that. And I think Coach Sampson talks about it a lot. I mean, he's been able to develop talent, but he's done that because he has players who had wanted to stay in the program and develop in the program instead of playing 1 and 2 years, then they're gone. And so you can't knock Penny for having NBA level talent for some of those kids who have and was blessed to be able to go from one and done. But I mean, you got to give my hats off to Penny and the job he's doing over there. He's definitely brought back that Memphis Tigers basketball tradition that they were at when they had John Calipari.
Agreed. And I'm glad Andy got a chance to get 2 questions from Penny and Dan. What Dayon said, this is a bitter rivalry. Okay, fans from both sides,
in the conference.
But the respect from the coaching staffs on both sides is mutual. Coach Sampson and his staff, UH staff, respects the job Penny does and his staff, and vice versa. Trust me when I say that. There's a mutual respect between both programs. They both play hard. They both have solid culture and solid foundations. So I think I'd love it at some point in the future if a non-conference game between Houston and Memphis takes place. to continue this rivalry. But it's good competition, and that's what I like seeing. And obviously, like to see Memphis have some success in the postseason tournament at the NCAA tournament because it's dollars and cents. If Memphis goes far in the tournament, that's units for the conference. And the Cougs units, even though they're in the Big 12, they'll still get those. Okay?
Right.
Once they start the Big 12, they'll get Big 12 units. So this is money too. So you should want to see other teams from the conference go far in the tournament because of money, if nothing else.
I mean, even last year when Memphis advanced the second round and they gave Gonzaga a run for their money in that game, in that second round matchup against the Bulldogs. But I want to point out Kevin Hancock's comment just because it's really, really cool. He said, we deserve the recognition. He said, you make alums like himself proud that the way we cover this program, which again, that's super awesome to hear. And it really helps us out to keep going forward. Now, segueing on that, on the topic of Memphis, and in particular, this game was just interesting with the way that it was called, with a lot of fouls. It's the reason why we had to kind of push back the start of Let's Rage Coogs, but I digress. That's not the important part of it. But what head coach Calvin Sampson said after the game is that if he was a referee, he would not want to officiate a game between these two programs, just because, again, going back to that culture, the style of Houston culture versus Memphis culture, it always seems like there's a true intensity in the air. It kind of ticks up when these two programs meet, regardless of whether it's in Houston, whether it's going to be in Memphis 2 weeks from now, or in the conference tournament at a neutral site. They always get up for these games, and really, I don't even think I'm going out on a limb. I think this is the only true rivalry left in the American Athletic Conference right now, just where Houston Cougars basketball program is.
And it's funny. One of my friends texted me that right before the game started. Is Memphis Houston's rival? Conference rival. They are. Head to head. It's kind of bitter, but there is a mutual respect between the programs. But the fouls, I had to look at the stat sheet. 13 fouls called in the first half, 26 fouls called in the second half. And, a handful of those for Memphis down the stretch to kind of extend the game, but there are a lot of fouls earlier in the second half as well. So it was a long second half.
Yeah, I think that boils into what it plays into how both teams are so physical and athletic, and they're going to play really hard. And so, I mean, for referees, it's kind of hard. Like Coach Sampson said, you wouldn't really want to ref because it's so much contact being made, and not every time you make contact in basketball is a foul. And so, where do you draw the line? That's when referees kind of set the tempo of the game. And so, I mean, it's a hard game to ref when you got two teams that are going to play as hard as they're going to play. They're going to be physical and they're going to apply the pressure. And so, I mean, but overall, I mean, you got to make your free throws like Houston did today, and they did that.
And that's one thing. Elijah McCadden played very well.
Yeah,
but he missed 5 free throws. For Memphis, he missed 5 of their 7. Hey, it happens.
Absolutely. Now,
Elijah McCadden. Guys, the Cougs fouled him 6 times. So he had an attack mode for Memphis, but he just missed his free throws. He was 7 for 12 from the foul line. So we'll see what he does in 2 weeks. If Kendrick Davis, assuming Kendrick plays in that matchup, you'll see Elijah McCadden's numbers in game and attempts will go down because Kendrick will have the ball in his hands more.
Absolutely. Now, before we kind of start to wrap things up specifically about this Houston Memphis game, a few players we haven't touched on. Jamal Shedd, who he had, I think it was probably the play of the game, where he had, I believe in the first half, he completely froze Malcolm Dandridge heading down the lane. He hit him with a crossover, and Dandridge looked like he just was stuck in the spot. Jamal Shedd blew past him, and he threw down the right-handed slam, which again energized the Fertitta Center crowd. And really got them up and just hyped up for that play. Now, he finished with 10 points in this game. He only had 2 assists, but again, just the way this game in particular turned out to be playing, it wasn't a high assist game. And again, another guard that we touched on in Terrence Arsenault, who after missing this past Thursday's game against SMU, got back on the floor. And again, he did impact the game. And in particular, the play that kind of stood out for everyone was when he stole the ball from DeAndre Williams, took it coast to coast, and finished a tough contested layup with Williams chasing him down somewhat.
Terrence played that stretch that he played was very good defense. I think possession or 2 later for Memphis, He played the passing lane and forced the ball to go out of bounds. I mean, he was very active defensively. So that's a good sign going forward for him and the team, is that his defense is getting better. You know, his team defense, his help defense is getting better. So that's a positive going forward.
And Coach Sampson is keep hitting on him having a big game because he isn't shooting the ball efficient right now. So it's only a matter of time before those shots fall. Like his defense, his rebounding, all of that has been up to par. Now it's about him just kind of getting out of the slump that he's been in and knock down some shots and kind of put forth his complete game. Because, I mean, you can see the talent is there, the warmth is there, the grit is there. Now it's about him just knocking down some shots like he did back in Oregon.
And, you know, Coach Sampson said, I don't remember the exact quote, but paraphrasing him, he said basically Terrence Arsenault will be I don't know if it's a great player, good player, but he said that's a fact. So that's high praise. That's high praise from Kelvin Sampson about the future of Terrence Arsenault. So keep that in mind going forward as well.
Also, Jairus. I know we haven't talked much about Jairus. I think if he comes out this year, which I expect he will, I don't have any sources on that, he'll be a lottery pick. But if he stayed a couple more years and developed in college, I think he could develop into a number 1, a number 2, number 3 overall pick. Because, I mean, when he comes out this year, if he does, he's going to be developing these next 2 years in the NBA, in which it depends on the situation he goes to. He may be allowed to do that on the floor, or it may be in practice or in the gym, whatever his situation may be. But I think, in my opinion, if he was to stay for Houston for another year or 2, he could develop even more into a number 1 overall pick, because he would just have more free space to get experience doing it. Versus, I mean, you don't really know where his situation would be next year if he was to go to the league and how it would play out. But I think the development between him, Terrence, and Emmanuel, it's all going to be good.
Yep. I've seen Jairus as high as 5 and as low as like 14. Yeah, one person had him behind UCF's Taylor Hendricks by a spot. I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But anyway, you know, lottery pick range for Jairus. I think he could use development another year at Houston. He's not going to do that. So you wish him well going forward in the NBA. And hopefully he goes to a franchise will allow him to develop and not get lost in the business of NBA basketball. But he not have a great game shot-wise, but he crashed the boards. Andy, Dayon.
8 rebounds again.
8 rebounds. 2 offensive rebounds. See, he crashed the boards. Got 2 on old boards there from standing on the perimeter.
And again, just overall to the going back to the atmosphere for Cheetah Center, it kind of turned out to be not an official homecoming game, but there were a lot of former Houston players in attendance, from Quentin Grimes, Fabian White, Kyler Edwards, Galen Robinson. I'm trying to list every single one of them. At least that they showed. Damian Dotson was there, Landon Gosselin was there, and even Houston Rockets Hall of Famer Hakeem Olajuwon was there. What did he do in college? I don't remember what he did in college or who he played for, but he was in attendance as well.
He was adequate as well in college. Yeah, he was all right. Yeah.
So, and they asked Kelvin Sampson about that after the game. And again, it just goes to the quote that stood out to me when Kelvin was asked about that is, it's a sign when former players show up and want to be around the program, it's a sign of how good the program is in and of itself, because, you know, players aren't going to want to go back to a situation, something where they didn't have a good time. It just shows the way Marcus Sasser described it, family. It's the true family that the Houston Cougars have built here at the University of Houston when it comes to the men's basketball team.
Yep, and I like this comment from King right here. Invited some of his friends, and they really liked the atmosphere. I like that. I enjoyed what Michael Young said. He was at a pregame event, and someone gave the quotes. I don't know if it's George Duarte directly, but Michael Young mentioned that Coach Sampson has invited Michael back to the program and would like Michael to be more involved in the program again. So that's great. Coach Sampson, he really does a great job of connecting or reconnecting alums to the program. So kudos to Coach for doing that.
Absolutely. Now, as we wind things down in regards to Houston, for those that might be trickling in again. Of course, the Houston Cougars final score from the Fertitta Center here on February 19th. The Cougars defeat the Memphis Tigers 72-64. Jawan Roberts had a 20 points, his career high, and 12 rebound double-double. Marcus Sasser also had 10 points, and Marcus Sasser had 20 points. Jamal Shedd had 10 points. Now, kind of segueing away from this game in and of itself, something that happened this weekend, I want to get your thoughts about it, was the official NCAA bracket preview. If the tournament started yesterday, Saturday, February 18th, the top 16 seeds were unveiled by the selection committee. I'm going to put it on the screen now so we can kind of go through it. But essentially, the Houston Cougars are overall picked by the selection committee. If the tournament started yesterday, the Houston Cougars would be the number 2 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, which puts them at being a number 1 seed in the Midwest region. The Alabama Crimson Tide, would be the number 1 overall seed had the tournament started yesterday, and the other 1 seeds are Purdue and Kansas. But sticking in particular with Houston and their Midwest region, which is Sweet 16 Elite 8 matchups in that region, would be in Kansas City. It's an interesting group of teams. Number 2 seed in the Midwest would be Texas. Number 3 would be Tennessee, and number 4 would be Xavier. Now, when you look at other teams in the state of Texas, number 2 seed Baylor in the South region with Alabama. It's also one of those top 16 teams. Looking at the field, again, as of February 18th, if the tournament started, this would be the top 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Kris, Dayon, what are your thoughts on Houston being the number 2 overall team overall in all of college basketball through games played February 17th and the potential Midwest region? Of course, it's not official, but would be interesting if that's what the Midwest region looks like for Houston if it stands 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks will be the true selection Sunday following the American Athletic Conference Championship tournament.
Kudos to ESPN's Joel Lenardi. He got it right. He predicted, stated, whatever you want to call it. He had the Cougs as the 2nd overall number 1 seed before the NCAA bracket reveal. I was glad to see it from another bracketologist guy. He was surprised, but pleasantly surprised, that the Cougs were the 2nd overall because of they're in the American. They're not part of the Power 5 yet, Big 12 and all those things. And I think I sent you the tweet. I hope I did, both you guys, because Andy, I think you heard it, and I think Dan, we mentioned it in the Les Rage Coogs after the Cougs played St. Mary's. Coach Randy Bennett mentioned after that game how almost every other team, top team, turned down facing the Cougs in Fort Worth. You remember that, Andy? So the bracketologist yesterday said a lot of top teams have turned down facing the Cougs because of the Cougs play and because they're intimidating. So they don't get a lot of chances for quadrant 1 wins non-conference. So that 1 win in Virginia carried a lot of weight. So it's good to see. I think Chris Reynolds, the chair of the committee, mentioned Houston's win at Virginia was big, and a big reason for them being 2nd number 1 overall. So kudos, salute to the committee.
Chris, to add on to your point, that's consistent with what I've been told in terms of the non-conference schedule, and some teams that, like you said, are avoided playing the Houston Cougars, regardless, even at a neutral site game. And going back to what Randy Bennett said after that December outing, I believe it was December 3 when St. Mary's and Houston played in Fort Worth, but it was kind of like last minute, and St. Mary's was the only team that would accept the invitation to play Houston again, not even at Fertitta Center or even away. It was at a neutral site game. So again, when you think about, and Chris, I know that you specifically have beef with how some people in the community might view when it comes to conference schedule, and in particular the Big 12, and how many quad 1 opportunities teams in the Big 12 have when compared to a team like Houston, even Gonzaga, that they're not part of a Power 5 conference, quote unquote. So much more often their quad 1 game opportunities are very limited, and Houston has, for the most part, done the most out of their quad 1 opportunities this season.
Yeah, and the thing is, Dan, I'll let you add it when I say this. If top tier teams say no or refuse to play Houston, that's not Houston's fault. Okay? But committee members, bracketologists, I don't know if they don't know that or they refuse to believe it. But, I mean, Kelvin Sampson does try to schedule tough non-conference opponents. And the team say, no. I mean, I think Coach Sam said it in some Zoom calls as well. He had some other teams lined up for non-conference, and they backed out. Well, damn.
Yep.
The Cougs play who agrees to play them. So don't penalize them so much. Well, they're not in the Big 12. They will be.
Yeah, I definitely don't think Houston's ducking no smoke. I think they will play anyone, anywhere. But I think they got it right. If that's the projection, I think they still have an opportunity to move up to the number 1 overall seed. I wouldn't write them off just yet. I think Alabama will have to have a strong finish to the season. Will probably win the SEC and go do well in the SEC tournament to hold on to that number 1 spot. But I think Houston has a chance. I think if they win their conference tournament and Alabama doesn't win there, so at least get to the championship game, Houston could jump them and get that number 1 seed, I think.
For me, the biggest thing when it comes to that bracket preview, and again, it's a preview. A lot can change from now and 3 weeks from now, but playing in the Midwest region, and in particular, like I said, the Sweet 16 Elite 8 round in that region would be in Kansas City. Not having Kansas in your region, if things shook out the way that they did yesterday, would be huge for Houston. But I'm curious to get the thoughts on the teams in that region from a matchup standpoint. Tennessee, Texas, and Xavier. I think that'd be a relatively good, favorable region when it comes to Houston matchup-wise. But I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts.
Xavier doesn't strike fear. You know, if I'm the Cougs, Texas will be a good matchup because I think Marcus Carr is a good guard, and Jabari Smith is playing very well as a guard for the Longhorns as well. That'd be fun to see. Longhorns, Tennessee would be interesting to see. That'd be like a rematch, wouldn't it be? Because they played in the
that would be the Sweet 16 match.
That'd be the regional semifinal. So that'd be interesting to see. But it's all about matchups, health, and the fact we're talking about the Cougs possibly being the number 1 overall seed. I just go back to it. Look how far this program has come.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the entire history of the Houston Cougars men's basketball program, they've only been a number 1 seed once, and that was back in 1983, which, again, Chris, like you said, it's a sign of where the program has come, especially when right before Kelvin Sampson took over a program, which, Chris, you were covering them then way back when. Did you imagine this ever to be possible?
Hell no. Hell no. I am thrilled to see how far the program has come and will continue to build upon the foundation, because this year is just the start of, I think, better things going forward once again to the Big 12. Despite the competition in the Big 12, they're going to get better talent because they're in the Big 12. Think about that.
Absolutely. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs, presented by the Saxenian Family. As always, we'd like to thank all our partners and sponsors for today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs, whether it be HOUNIL, Star Pizza. Dan, I'll toss it over to you. Where can people find you on social media, and any final message that you may have about this game?
Find me on all social media, like it shows next to my name below, at Dayon Dunlap. The only thing that I have to add is Houston can beat you in a plethora of ways with their defense being the leading factor. On offense, they can beat you from 3. They can beat you from the free throw line. They can beat you from getting the ball in the paint. But all the balls around their ability to guard and stop you from scoring. So I'm loving the trajectory of this team and where they're headed. I think they are real championship contenders.
And I'm Kris Gardner, Houston Roundball Review. See me on Twitter, VHR Review, Houston Roundball Review on .com, Houston Roundball Review on Instagram and TikTok. I agree with Dayon. The Cougs, they win in different ways, and that's a sign of a good team. To win games where you're not playing at your best. So today was not their A game. May not have been Memphis's B game, B+ game. But the Cougs did the things to win today. And that's what we're focusing on today. And we're back late night. Andy, Dayon, Wednesday will be a Let's Rage Coogs after
8
dark.
p.m. tip.
So
8 p.m.
tip off against Tulane.
Interesting. It's a home game.
So, yeah.
It's for Fertitta Center game. But 8 p.m. tip-off makes it a little bit interesting. But once again, my name is Andy Yanez. You can follow me on all social media platforms at @Yanez_5. More importantly, you can follow us on social media at PodSlammaJamma, or check out the PodSlammaJamma YouTube channel on YouTube, wherever. Just put it up in the search bar if you're watching us on YouTube. Put PodSlammaJamma and hit subscribe if you haven't already. It does help us out, and we're on the road to 1,000. While we are here, Let's Rage Coogs streaming live on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. Be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, because it's the easiest way to help us out. It really helps us out a lot, and more importantly, it's free. But once again, the final score from inside the Fertitta Center, the Houston Cougars are victorious over Memphis 72-64. We're winding down in the regular season portion of it. It's almost March. It's almost that exciting time of the year. But as always, thank you to all of our partners, and thank you to all of you guys for watching and being a part of the show. As always, Dan, you get the final word.
Let's Rage, Cougs.